I say that hasn't already been said? For a game that is really the spiritual successor to the lesser-known Demon's Souls, which not even that many people really bought until after Dark Souls came out, it's kind of impressive that the spiritual successor for Demon's Souls was the one in the series that would be most popular. Hell, Dark Souls itself had 2 direct sequels, and it's very recent, Dark Souls Remastered. But how is the remaster? Does it live up to the original? Does it fuck it up entirely? See, what made the original Dark Souls so impactful when it first came out was that it had awesome visuals, punishing difficulty, but not so punishing where you throw the controller and leave. It's more of like you put it down for a little bit, you come back, you get your ass kicked again, you leave, you come back, and the cycle repeats until you eventually kill the boss. Or you get good. And the cool part is that Dark Souls really took off for those reasons. One of the best examples that a lot of people talk about with Dark Souls is how you can look at a tower way off in the distance from where you start off in the game, and you can actually, most likely, follow a path that will lead you to that tower where there's probably like a big boss or some treasure or something that can help you on the quest later on. Now, as far as the crushing difficulty of Dark Souls, well, it wasn't the first game to do that. The aforementioned Demon's Souls was crushingly difficult, and other games like God Hand were also difficult, but once you got good, you could do really well and do some really cool things. So Dark Souls played off those really, really nicely, having this almost addictive nature to when you lose to a boss, when you're fighting it and you get it down to that one little hit of health, but then you get greedy, so then you get knocked back and boom, you're dead, and you lose all your souls and you throw the controller and you get all angry. But then you come back. Now the remaster, I do think, captures the original feeling of the first Dark Souls game. The graphics are even more beautiful than they were before, and the difficulty remains the same. I feel like the Dark Souls Remastered is more polished both graphically and gameplay-wise as well. It doesn't feel quite as clunky as it did when it first came out, and that really does show. Now, don't get me wrong, there's no dramatic changes, there's no extra bosses that have been added, there's no new items or secrets or anything like that. It's just the entire game of Dark Souls Remastered. But the little things that they do change, the small tweaks that really elevate this game, I think were much needed, especially considering some things that may have brought the original Dark Souls down. One complaint of the original Dark Souls was, of course, Blight Town. No matter what you were playing on, whether it was a PC or an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3, the frame rate at Blight Town was terrible. And it went down to like 3 frames per second where you would just slowly move. And then you would die because you get so frustrated because you can't see jack shit, and then you get all angry. But you got through it, right? And so many people, despite this big area of the game, got through it. But the remaster fixes that quite nicely. It's no longer this ugly, clunky 2 frames per second BS. It's now fully realizing how it was meant to be played, and it's very fluid. And I think, to a certain degree, that makes it more difficult. Because as a seasoned Dark Souls player, I got used to the crappy, choppy frame rate of Blight Town, so I just knew how to avoid it. Or I would go down the back door because I knew where the secret entrance was. Now, another thing that they changed within the Dark Souls Remastered was they changed the multiplayer. Originally, the multiplayer was really, really difficult to do. Especially if you were trying to summon a friend that was also playing on the same system as you into their world. There were certain parameters, like they couldn't have beat the boss yet, or they had to be at a certain level to be close to yours, and it was really convoluted and complicated to where you couldn't play the game that it was meant to, whether that would be invading other people to steal their souls and humanity, or playing with friends to beat a difficult boss that's giving you a really hard time. The remaster fixes that, so it's more or less the same system that was in Dark Souls 3, where you throw down your summon sign and then bada bing, bada boom, you're there. And what's really refreshing too is that because the remaster just came out, it's like playing Dark Souls 1 for the first time, but everything's just a little bit better. And some people may argue that having a Blight Town that doesn't run at 2 frames per second, or easily being able to summon help to fight a difficult boss or an area that you're stuck in, might lose a little bit of what made the original Dark Souls good. And to a degree, I get it, right? You know, the slogan of the game is, get good. And overcoming these obstacles such as not counting on people to help you fight bosses and low frame rate areas like Blight Town would make you really good as a player. And it certainly helped me when I first played the game. But fixing those issues, I think, makes the game better. And it's really refreshing to see a remaster done that actually changes even small things about the game. Because most remasters are just like, oh, hey look, we polished the graphics. But with the Dark Souls remaster, they actually took some of the gameplay and difficult things that were unfair in the first Dark Souls and cleaned it up. And I think that's a really good thing. So now that the Dark Souls got a remaster, I'm starting to wonder if From Software is going to get off their ass and do what they should have done. I want a remaster of this bad boy right here. Now, besides the fact that I don't own a PlayStation 3, even though I have 2 rare games for it, I actually have all the other From Software games for PlayStation 4. And rumor has it, when one video game player collects all of the From Software Souls series in one playable collection, they will ascend their mortal coil and become gods. All joking aside, I do understand that Demon's Souls, if you were to go back and play it now, it would feel really clunky, and the difficulty borders along that line of unfair. One example being that whenever you die in human form, your health bar gets cut in half. Now, in Dark Souls 2, they were able to tweak that a little bit, so instead of losing it all at once, it would gradually happen over time. But there were items within the game that you can use to regain that. Demon's Souls, you have to kill an archdemon and steal a big demon's soul. That's the only way to return to human. And you'll most likely quickly get killed after that, rendering your health bar useless. But with a game that started such an incredible franchise, I think it would be very, very disappointing to not see Demon's Souls get the same polish and fixing that Dark Souls did. Because Dark Souls piggybacked off Demon's Souls so much. It's the spiritual successor that rose above the original to create a whole franchise of games. Will they remaster Demon's Souls? I don't know. They didn't make Bloodborne 2, and that was pretty evident at E3, although I am very excited to check out Shadows Die Twice. You know it's going to be a good time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate that. This has been another episode of Kirk Talk, and I will see you guys in the next one.